Been reading a bit about this case involving Princess Latifa, the 35-year-old daughter of the Sheikh, the ruler of the United Arab Emirates. Now, this is quite a complex case, and I'm still getting my head around some aspects of it. Um, but the basic version is this. Um, Videos have emerged of this young woman in ostensibly in captivity in some sort of converted villa, and the videos thought to be from uh, phone, from WhatsApp or some sort of satellite connection to this phone, um, date from 2019. And there's growing pressure on the UAE, well, the Prime Minister of Dubai, the Sheikh, to come clean and let the world know what the situation is with his daughter. Human rights activists are pushing this, and it's kind of drawn Britain in because the Sheikh is friends with the Queen. Since this controversy emerged, there was a documentary on Panorama. I didn't see the documentary, but apparently the palace has now announced that the Queen won't be seen in public with him. They were friends because they share a love of horse racing. Um, so a little bit more detail here, and I want to talk about how this ties into Britain's relations to countries with dubious human rights records. Um, as per the Times, in a series of secretly recorded videos, Princess Latifa bint Mohammed al-Maktoum claims to have been threatened with being shot unless she cooperates with official statements issued by her father. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum is close to the Queen because of their shared love of horse racing and is an influential ally of Britain in the Middle East. A UK court in 2020 actually ruled, though, that he abducted Latifa and her sister princess Shamsa, and that goes right back to 2000. Uh, this is a family that seems to have had a history of problems. She is one of 30 children by six different wives, but he is now estranged from his wife. Let me just get because it's on different pages. I want to get the names correct here. He's now estranged from Princess Haya bint Al Hussein. Now, apparently, she organised a meeting in 2018 with the former UN High Commissioner, former President of Ireland, Mary Robinson. Mary Robinson is now sort of facing a bit of backlash for this because she says that both she and Princess Haya were misled. The purpose of this visit was to say that Princess Latifa was a vulnerable young woman with bipolar disorder, and the images from that showed kind of very amicable scenes of her having lunch. And the image that the Sheikh wants to portray to the outside world is this is a young woman who was misled by criminals in previous situations where she was brought out of the country. That's my understanding. It's a complex case. I will say this, though, that from my perspective, if the Sheikh has nothing to hide, and if his daughter really is suffering from bipolar disorder, or she was a victim of some sort of con and she was being used, well, then what's he got to hide? You know, if she is being treated well, he says that he wants to protect her privacy. But the last communication this young woman had with the rest of the world, she was frightened and distressed. She was basically um, exemplifying what she was saying, that she was a hostage. It very much looked like that. So, if I was a father and head of government and I was accused of mistreating my daughter, and the last communication she had with the outside world was a very negative one, I'd definitely be wanting to reassure the world and saying, no, this is actually the situation, and not with some sort of rigged propaganda thing, but just with the truth. Um, Dominic Raab was speaking about this yesterday. He said that Britain always raises human rights issues, including with Dubai. There were accusations that we are turning a blind eye to this because of our close geopolitical ties. And that gets into a whole realm of, well, frankly, double standards. Do we turn a blind eye to human rights issues with allies like the UAE? I mean, this is a country which has also come under scrutiny for its labour rights. In fact, all the Gulf states have a dubious record on that. My most viewed video, one of my most viewed videos, is about the Filipino maid and influencer. I think it was either Qatar or the United Arab Emirates. I can't recall off the top of my head, but that's one of my most viewed videos because that sort of got a lot of interest in the Philippines, where basically this influencer was saying that she would hold the passport, but she was complaining about the fact that she couldn't hold the passport and that her employees wanted one day off in the week. And there was a lot of anger about her attitude. I made a video about that. I was angry about her attitude, and it got something like 32,000 views, which by my standards is kind of viral. You know, my average video gets about 50 to 100 views. So obviously that galvanized a lot of interest. Now, in this case, there are two sides, but I don't think the Sheikh's particularly helping his case by the lack of transparency. If she was used by people, if she suffers from bipolar disorder, presumably there'd be some sort of doctor's report in that. But then, we're talking here about one of the wealthiest men in the world. It would be pretty easy to rig things in his way. I think he needs to be more transparent, and I do think that Foreign Office here needs to put pressure on him. It may well be that we do actually, what Rab says is true, and we do put human rights concerns behind closed doors. But the problem is, if we look like we're going out of our way to defend human rights abusers or alleged human rights abusers just because they're geopolitical allies, then, countries like Iran and China will charge us with hypocrisy. Not that they've any leg to stand on, they don't. But it would look like, well, the British don't really care about human rights. It's just politics. It would be hard to counter that because it would look like we are indeed not doing enough. Saudi Arabia is another example. Even now with reforms that they have made, it still remains one of the worst countries in the world for basic rights. And so long as people like Raif Badawi are treated the way they are, the atheist blogger, um, then it's repugnant. It really is. In the case of the UAE, if this is how a princess is treated, one can imagine what the average woman, what her situation might be. Probably not as bad as Saudi Arabia. My understanding is it isn't that draconian, but I don't think any of the Gulf states have a particularly gleaming record when it comes to human rights. Those flash skyscrapers and oil wealth cannot disguise some of the things that are going on behind closed doors. A friend of the princess and a human rights campaigner um, pointed out that, Britons are on the beaches in Dubai, could be hundreds of yards from there, she could be imprisoned. So who knows? There are two sides. It might well be that there is a bit more to this, but if that's the case, then the Sheikh has nothing to hide, and he should be, this excuse that he wants to give her privacy sounds dubious when her last communication with the world in this 2019 video, in fact, that's on the cover of the Times. This is the image that's going around the world, so he needs to answer to that and explain it. Um, and his extreme wealth and the fact he's a head of government shouldn't be a way to deflect criticism. If we cannot stand up and say he needs to answer questions, then I think it damages our credibility as well. Um, so we need to have the ability to do that. Um, like I say, it might be that what the foreign secretary says is true, and they do push these things behind doors, but if this continues, they're going to have to be a bit more vocal. The UAE relies on tourism. According to the Times, British people make up the third highest rates of tourists, Saudis and I think I forget what the other nationality was, but we're yeah Indians, Saudis, Indians, and British tourists are the three main nationalities that make up the tourist trade, which accounts for some 20% of the UAE's GDP. So it's a very very important industry there. Um, there has been a few cases of Western tourists getting in trouble for morality laws. I take the view if the Gulf states want to be treated with respect, if they kind of want to show off their wealth and say these are good places to come for tourism, they really, really need to improve the human rights record. And if it can affect the daughter of a sheikh, then imagine what it'll be like for the ordinary person and the ordinary woman. So there are some very important questions here. I hope she's safe. But the video is quite concerning. I think he needs to come clean. I think there needs to be pressure on him to come clean. If he's saying that this is all a manipulation and he's being treated unfairly, okay, well then prove to the world that she is safe and not some sort of propaganda video where, let her say herself without guards, without anyone pressuring her of her own free will.